The first thing this doctor should do is set up an incentive system and a consistent recall program. So maybe staff could be incentivized with like $30 or like $50 per patient that comes back in. I've seen practices they open up slots on Fridays and they add an extra hygiene column on Fridays, and they run deals where it's like $100 bonus to each staff member if hygiene is completely full on the Saturday. So sort of getting this team behind a recall effort and getting them bought into doing it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tau, and as always, I hope you're having a great day whenever you're listening to this episode. As always, I want to also thank my sponsors, which allow me to come to your inbox every single Friday at 5 a.m. with a new episode. Those sponsors are Dental Intelligence, CallRail, and Net32. You will hear various commercials during this podcast, so please check out those sponsors and use them for their supporting this podcast. I also want to remind everybody about my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, September 25th through 27th. You do not want to miss this great event coming up. It's about 6 weeks away. You can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING to save $100 on your registration. It is a team-friendly event, so if you are interested in coming, please plan on bringing your team. You do not want to miss this event. That's all I can tell you. We have a lot of fun things in store. And on this episode, I have one of our new sponsors, 10X Dental. And the title of the podcast is The Hidden Revenue Sitting in Your Recall List. My guest is Aman Garg. Aman is the founder of 10X Dental, an AI-powered recall platform that helps dental practices bring overdue and unscheduled hygiene patients back into the office. Aman grew up in Singapore before moving to the United States to study computer science at Cornell University. He left during his junior year after being accepted into the Y Combinator, where he raised funding to launch 10X Dental. His interest in dentistry came from observing two very different sides of the industry. In high-end aesthetic practices, he saw how strong personal relationships helped create loyalty and trust with patients. While shadowing at a DSO, he saw the scale and discipline behind high-volume recall efforts. Today, Aman combines those lessons to help dental front desks reach, engage, and reactivate patients more effectively, using AI to support the team and keep schedules full. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Aman Garg. Aman, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Len.
So we are fairly new in terms of working together. You had reached out a little bit ago, and we connected, and we obviously, I understand the AI space. AI is all over the industry, and to a point where there is a lot of overlap in what companies do for your practice. So you're very specific in what you do, which is you help reactivate and bring in recall or hygiene patients back into the schedule. That's your very specific, task that you are going to accomplish. So can you just give an overview of the space related to AI, let's call it from the administrative perspective, not dealing with clinical stuff like Pearl or Overjet or any of those things, but from a purely administrative perspective, what is your take on the current state of AI in the dental industry, and kind of where do you see things moving? Because AI has only been in this space maybe a year or two, and already there's so many different companies, and they come and go. I mean, literally one company's here one day, they're gone the next. So can you kind of just give where you think the industry is and what you think the future looks like?
Sure. So there are a few different ways that people are leveraging AI in practices right now. It's a really good question, just taking a step back and mapping out what are people doing with AI today and how can it be helpful. I think a big one you see, first of all, is AI that picks up the phone calls. So that means someone calls your office at 7 p.m. on a Friday, and it's probably going to go to voicemail, and then you're going to chase them down on Monday. Instead of doing that, an AI can pick up that call and help them out, leave a message for the front desk, book them straight into your schedule for you, or answer questions like, do you take Delta Dental? That's one of them. And
we call that an inbound AI agent is what the best term is. They're handling inbound calls. They're a lot of times saying they're AI, so if you don't want to interact, you just say, I want someone to call me, and they move the call. But that's an inbound call. That's something that the practice is receiving from either a new patient or an existing patient. We'll just call that an inbound call.
Yes.
You're on the other side of the fence, which is an outbound call. So
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on there. We're more on the, we also do offer inbound call AI that picks up the phone, but our focus is very much outbound, reaching the hundreds of patients who've come in a couple times, and then they smile at you and leave the practice, and you keep wondering when they're going to respond to your automated text message, but you are sort of slowly just bleeding those patients because people don't have the bandwidth to work them. That's sort of our area, outbound phone calls. And then there's a whole ecosystem around RCM processes that is also very big right now.
Got it. So outbound recall. Now, there's also outbound unscheduled treatment, but again, that's not a focus of what you do. Your focus is literally bringing in those overdue or patients who are being reactivated strictly into the hygiene schedule. That's really what the focus is here.
Yeah,
So
and we're moving towards unscheduled treatment follow-up also, but right now our main focus is hygiene recall.
Got it. Okay. So you grew up in Singapore. You came to the United States. You went to Cornell and dropped out after, and I think in your junior year, you said, because you were accepted into the Y Combinator. How did you come up with this idea? Okay. Why did you pick the dental industry? Because that's always interesting how people get into the dental industry. But talk about your background there. I'm curious for those that are listening. I want to really share your origin story is really what I'm looking for here.
So to be honest, we don't have like a crazy strong tie to dental or anything. We shadowed a lot of different local businesses. We spent time at vets, auto dealerships, credit unions, and we were really looking to find customers who would make decisions fast and who were very interested in scaling their businesses quickly and implementing very, very scalable systems that would help them reach more patients effectively. And we found dental practices tick that box. We had two sayings that were very, very pivotal for us. One of them was someone told us that dental practice owners want to live in the same neighborhood as heart surgeons, but they don't want to do as much school. So we thought, wow, that sounds like a savvy customer who wants to grow an enterprise. The second one we heard is that vets are similar to dental practice owners, but they pay more for school and they tend to make less than dental practice owners, and their focus is really much more animal focused and less enterprise focused, which sort of steered us a bit more to dental practices because we wanted to sell to, enterprise scalar focused customers. Does that make sense, Len?
That makes a lot of sense. So, and I agree with what you just said based on the different research that you were doing prior. So, a lot of practices, their focus is on new patients. They focus heavily on new patient generation. And when you look at their systems that are failing, there really is no great follow-up for hygiene patients. A lot of times it's the hygienist who has to do it in between patients, or when they have a cancellation, they go on the computer, they look up a list of patients who are overdue, and they call them and they leave a message, or they have this automated text message that goes out, through the communication software that says, "Hey, you're overdue. Would you like to schedule a hygiene appointment?" And nothing ever happens there. So the process is kind of not great. So again, you have these practices that are focused heavily on new patients because that's their main concern. Why do you believe the existing patients that are due for recall is one of the biggest growth opportunities in dentistry?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk to so many practices who ask us, what can you do for new patients? And we tell them, we don't touch new patients. We're focused on recalling and bringing those patients you have back. They say, yeah, that's good, that's cool. Okay, we'll try it. And then they start seeing like 40, 50 additional patients per month who they haven't seen in like 18 months coming back into the practice. And they previously thought, oh, these guys all moved away, they died, they have a new dentist. Because, they don't respond to those automated texts at a very high rate. So the practices kind of write them off, and they're so used to dealing with that silent attrition year after year after year that they've sort of taken it as inevitable. But I think the real value in these returning patients is they're patients who know how your insurance works, they've been in before, they probably like you and trust you already. If they're 18 months out, there's probably some work there that you can diagnose. I know the Association of American Dentistry estimates the value of a checkup at $800. So just doing those exams and x-rays, even if the sort of PPO reimbursement rate you're seeing on a pro fee is low, it gives you that opportunity to diagnose work in patients you haven't seen for a very long time.
The barrier to them coming in is limited as well, because if you are an insurance-based practice, the patients have 2 cleanings per year that they get to use anyway. So you're getting that back in for something that, again, they know they need a cleaning. They know they need it usually twice a year, and that's why you're probably keying on those patients, because, like you said, a lot of times they already like and trust the business. They're used to their hygienists, and they simply are too busy to make the appointment, and you're doing all the work that's necessary to bring them back in the practice. Is that a fair, overview of kind of the space we're dealing with?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's very much like once you schedule enough patients to understand what this really looks like from the patient side, that provides a lot of insight into what's going on. You start to realize there are so many patients. After, we've scheduled like upwards of 5,000 patients now. We schedule so many of them. We have data on so many interactions with patients. We're just realizing now that it's just patients who are busy. They know who you are. They know your practice. They know where you are. And even if they're 3 years out, there are a lot of patients who you could ask, who's your dentist? And they'll still say it's you guys. They just haven't been to the dentist since. And they're reactivatable. You just have to reach them. So it's very much a patient psychology question of what does a patient who's 12 months out look like? What's their day-to-day like? And once you start to understand that they're just busy people who keep saying, I'll get around to it later, hygiene recall starts to make a lot more sense.
Got it, and I agree with you 100% there. Talk to me about, so those listening to the podcast or viewing it on YouTube, there's various practice management softwares. So someone's going to get excited and you may not work with them. So what platforms do you work with? What are some that you may not work with, just so people are aware?
Sure. So the 2 categories of PMS, you have the servered PMSs and the serverless PMSs, the cloud-based ones. So for servered PMSs, we work with Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental. And on the serverless side, we work with Curve, Dentrix Ascend, CareStack, iDentalSoft, and Denticon.
Planet GDS for those that know it by the other name. So,
yes,
and that's cloud-based. You said server twice, but it's cloud for those versus server. Totally got you. Yes. Okay, so you're limited to those at this point, 8 or 7 or 8 of them, whatever the number is. Are you going to add ones as time goes on? What's the goal there? Just out of curiosity.
I think we will keep adding integrations. I think we do span around 98% of the market right now. But there are fast-growing players like Archie and Oryx that we don't support right now, that we definitely would like to start supporting in the coming years.
Okay, that's good.
It's like a completely different game in Canada. They have ClearDent there.
Oh, ClearDent, AbleDent, Gold, DDS. There's so many different versions of software there too as well. And I deal with that when I talk about Bird Eye. There's a lot of them. Tracker is a popular one. So much more in Canada. So getting back on track here. So you mentioned that dental patients are willing to come back in, which we know. What are you seeing in your system that supports that, and why do you think so many overdue patients remain unscheduled in general?
So the first one is, what gives us the impression that you can bring a lot of patients back into your practice? Like, why do we have such confidence that recall will work for you? We have numbers platform-wide. Our average recall rate is 16%. And what that means is if we reach out to 100 patients for your practice, 16 of them will schedule appointments. Now, that doesn't mean 16% of them are showing up. Our platform-wide attendance rate is 85%. So of that 16%, 85% will show up and be a butt in the chair for you. And that gives us confidence that if you do run a very good, consistent recall effort, you will see a lot of patients. Now,
so someone's listening to this and they're wondering what exactly you do. So AI can do a lot. They can send text messages. They can call on the phone. Obviously, I think this is more of someone calling the patients and having a AI communication with them. But can you talk about a scenario? Patients overdue. At what point they could be 3 months overdue? They could be a day overdue. At what point does your system go in there, pull their names out and reach out? And what does a typical scenario looks like?
Sure. So the way our stuff works is we plug into the practice management system, which we just talked about. And in that practice management system, we can see every single patient and when they last came into the practice. And we can see the practice's schedule, their hygiene columns, when they have openings, when they have blocks and stuff. And then what we do is we use certain milestones. So when somebody's exactly 6 months out, for example, that's not 6 months overdue, exactly 6 months out. So their insurance will cover another cleaning, like you mentioned, Len. We'll start reaching out to them then. And it's extremely customized. So we'll use the practice's language, and it will be like, would you like to come in for a free cleaning? Because we know that their insurance is covering it.
Got it. Okay. All right. And then you say you're typically seeing about 85% show rate.
Yes.
Okay. What do you think is the biggest driver of that? Is it just stuff happens, or do you see any patterns when patients are scheduling? Sometimes they're not the best patients, so they just don't show. What does your data show there?
So the first one is the confirmation sequence the practice uses is very important. We've had practices that have like really large spectrums of confirmation sequences. We had this practice in Sacramento. They're confirming people 10 days out. So they said, oh, we have a great system. It's very comprehensive. The problem is the patient base there is, a pretty responsible patient base. So 10 days out, they get that ping from the Sacramento dentist, and they click, yes, accept, I'll 100% be there. Thanks, doc. And the way they configured their system, they don't get another ping until, they don't get another ping at all. So 10 days out, they're saying yes. That's a big chunk of the people. Then nobody else is hitting them up. The appointment day passes and they miss it because they think another reminder's coming in. So that's a very big factor. And another big one that can hurt practices is if they're not confirming patients far out enough. Like if you only do next day confirmations, your schedule will just keep falling apart day after day with that next day confirmation. And it's not going to give you time, or it's not going to give your front desk time to sort of backfill those cancellations and work their ASAP list.
Got it. Okay. All right. So a lot of practices, a lot of team members are concerned that AI is taking over, and I'm having to assure them that using AI agents is just to support the office. They're not going to replace, the human interaction all that much. So how do you feel AI can support the front desk without replacing the human touch that patients still need? Because patients still want to know that the person that's been at the front desk for these years there to support them is still there and still can, assist them if they need it.
I think it's very, very, very important that patients, I think a big driver of retention in dental practices is the relationship the dental patient has with the front desk, with the hygienist, and with the doctor. So it's very important that that is front and center. Otherwise, you will hurt retention. So if you look at a practice, say they have 2,000 active patients, and in the last 18 months, they have 400 patients that are overdue and unscheduled. Len, you mentioned before that the way practices often do recall is a hygienist picks up the phone and then dials maybe like 20 people in their 1 hour opening on the schedule before they realize they have another patient or they realize they hate doing it and get a bunch of voicemails. In an ideal world, the front desk, who everyone loves, would be able to dial them individually, and people would recognize them and be very happy to speak to them, and they'd bring back all of those 400 people for you and just work that list for 8 hours a day, week over week. But realistically, Len, like that lovely front desk lady is going to get very, very sad talking about, she's going to get very sad making those dials. She's going to get a lot of voicemails. She'll get a lot of angry patients, and it's going to take her way too long to follow up with everyone. The other thing is when this front desk is making the calls, she's probably making them between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And the thing is, unfortunately, the front desk lady's at work, so she's dialing then. But the patients are also sitting in their offices, and their phones are on DND, so the poor front desk is getting voicemails the whole day, feeling like she's not really accomplishing anything. So in a perfect world, front desks would be able to reach every patient personally, but the volume is so high and it requires so much follow-up that some of these patients, it's kind of a question of, do you want them getting text messages and ignoring them? Or, is there a way you can leverage AI to just scalably reach all these people?
That makes a lot of sense as well. So I'm sure you have data that shows when a patient comes back in the practice through recare, what kind of ROI does the practice see just beyond filling that one hygiene appointment? Because these patients do need dentistry as well. So I'm sure you're showing some data metrics through when you're bringing them back in, and what results ROI are coming out of those appointments?
So the way we track ROI platform-wide is we first measure the recall production. So that basically means on their first visit back, the production from doing their cleaning, their checkup, and their x-rays. And we measure the amount of subsequent production that comes in over the next 2 weeks of recalling them. And we claim all of that as our reactivation production. And our average platform-wide right now is $450 per patient that comes back in.
So there's significant ROI from these appointments coming back into the practice. Can you just discuss or talk about your fees? How do you price your product for dental practices? Just so people understand that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So our product costs $970 per month. And we're doing a special for listeners of Len's podcast where it's $200 for the first month. So we can prove out that ROI we talked about.
So you said, just repeat it one more time. You said, I know it's $200 for listeners of the podcast, and it's how much per month?
$970.
It doesn't depend on the size of the practice. What your practices are the same. Doesn't matter if they're one doctor and 3 hygienists or one doctor, 1 hygienist, same price.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. So a couple other questions I want to review. So if a dentist looked at their hygiene overdue schedule and unscheduled list today, what do you think is the first thing that they should do, just in general?
The first thing you should do, just in general, looking at your list, realizing, okay, you do have some volume over here, some overdue unscheduled patients here, and looking at it and you realize, okay, you know what, there are some gaps in our hygiene schedule. And, the hygienist, I'm just trying to establish sort of the base case first. So we have a dental practice. They have a pretty big recall list. The doctor takes a look at it inside his dental intelligence or whatever he's using to sort of do practice analytics. Maybe it's just in his EagleSoft. But he figures out there's a big recall volume here. Then he looks at his next week's schedule and figures out that a bunch of people canceled and that, it would be pretty good if we could just consistently work these people into the recall schedule. The first thing this doctor should do is set up an incentive system and a consistent recall program. So maybe staff could be incentivized with $30 or $50 per patient that comes back in. I've seen practices they open up slots on Fridays and they add an extra hygiene column on Fridays, and they run deals where it's like $100 bonus to each staff member if hygiene is completely full on the Saturday. So sort of getting this team behind a recall effort and getting them bought into doing it. But if you don't want to go that way, maybe it would be good to just free up staff and tell all staff, we're gonna not do treatment, we're not gonna do hygiene for the last hour on Thursdays, and we're just gonna spend this as a recall block and see how many patients we can bring in. I think it's very important for practices to dedicate some time every week to recalling patients. Even if it's not a large-scale effort with hundreds of calls per day, like our software does. I think it's important that practices start recalling patients and tracking the ROI they're seeing from returning patients.
Got it. So when I introduce a phone answering company, to a dentist, they always say, oh, my team handles all these calls already. Why do we need something to answer phones? And if they look at the data, I can guarantee you they don't answer all the calls that come into the practice. Okay. And it happened in my practice as well. You miss a lot of calls. So what would your answer be to a dentist that you meet that says, my team already handles recall, why do we need something like yours?
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's like, if we're already doing this here, why do I need to add another extra line item to do what my team already does? That seems pretty wasteful. It really comes down to how many overdue unscheduled patients you have. So even if your team is already working your recall list, but it turns out that you have 300 overdue unscheduled patients with your team working it, and the reason the doctor has his team working it is he's realized that it's a good ROI on time to have my staff calling people. It logically follows, if we can, beef up that recall effort and help you do more of that activity that's working well, you should do it. Just because it's already being done in some quantity doesn't mean more shouldn't be done. The same way with the phone calls. The staff is doing a good job picking up phone calls, but more phone calls could be picked up, and picking up those phone calls is a positive ROI for the practice.
So you mentioned when we discussed pricing, you mentioned that there's a $200 cost to do a pilot for 30 days, really to prove it out to those naysayers that may not think it's a worthwhile investment to spend almost $1,000 on recare. So what have you seen from a typical 30-day rollout? What do you think a successful recall rollout looks like in the first 30 days? Because you want to make sure that they understand the value that you're bringing them within that time frame.
Well, we always shoot to bring 20 patients in, at least in that first month, and we're able to hit that consistently.
So the ideal is to bring in 20 additional recall patients, which will also help fill the schedule too for those openings. Speaking of that, how do you have any availability or any option within your software that if somebody cancels at the last minute for them to call overdue patients or the ASAP patients who want to get in right away to fill those, let's say, same-day cancellations that they get?
This is a very good question, Len. It's one we get asked a lot. We have tried it at a smaller scale with AI in a few locations. And the problem we just kept running into is that working these overdue ASAP lists with AI starts to create bot fatigue. Patients start to feel like they're dialing me with AI and they're using me to plug in these holes in their schedule. And they're working me pretty consistently because, of course, the AI has a lot of bandwidth to do this stuff. So patients start feeling like, I'm not a valued patient here. It's, they're kind of trying to feed me into the schedule. And it's still very much an open question for us. Like, there are things we could do, like ask patients, hey, do you want to opt into our ASAP list so we can reach out to you this week? And there are ways we're looking at addressing it. But what we're also finding with filling those last minute cancels is if every week you're just scheduling 5 additional patients and fitting them into the schedule, the attendance rate on those patients tends to be good. And that also really helps with just sprucing up the schedule. Because then you're not just relying on people calling in and the patients you've pre-appointed from 6 months out. You're also getting that influx of returning patients, keeping your schedule afloat.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. The last question that I have is, how do you make these recall messages feel more personalized or personal instead of the typical automation that we see? How does it be more human-like than bot-like?
It has to be about helping the patient, Len. Like patients who say, hey, I'm not too keen right now, the AI cannot follow up with them. They need to be left alone. It needs to be reaching out to patients, and everything needs to be from that Beverly Hills perspective we talked about before, which is helping patients. When is it best for me to reach you to help you schedule? Are Mondays normally best for you? Can I hold a slot for you? How can I make it as easy as possible for you and give you the feeling of you're attending a 10-star clinic and you have a dedicated person there who's always working around the clock to help you? That's what we're trying to create. So it's not pushy, we're not following up too much. We're always asking people, what slots work best for you? How can we help you more? How was your visit? Things like that improve patient experience. So it feels like every patient has someone there pulling for them and taking care of them in the practice.
Got it. So we're running out of time. Is there anything that we have not covered yet that you would like to cover before we switch to the lightning round Q&A?
One thing that's interesting, I just thought of this while we were talking earlier. A very common objection we get is we pre-appoint everyone, and hence we don't do recall. What do you think of that, Len?
Well, patients do cancel, and you're not, and I guarantee you're not scheduling everybody. You want to pre-appoint everybody. There are so many patients that says, you know what, I need to check my schedule. 6 months is a really long time away, and they don't schedule. So yes, I pre-appointed everybody, but there are still so many patients who either cancel or don't schedule, and you need to get them back in the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Were you ever surprised looking at the recall list you had, like how many patients it was?
It was a very frustrating experience seeing how many patients who, again, you already said it's very profitable. These recall patients generally need dentistry. So by eliminating the number of patients that you're getting into the schedule, you're really limiting your profitability, in my opinion.
I completely agree. A lot of doctors are surprised that from recalling everyone, you get to 400 overdue unscheduled patients somehow.
Agree 100% with you. So let's switch to our lightning round Q&A, Aman. And just to reiterate, these are supposed to be very fast answered questions. We're going to try to get through 8 to 10 of these, so really fast, nothing too long drawn out here, okay? All right, so the first question that we're going to bring up is, let's pull it up here. What book do you want to go back and reread as it's made a great impact on you the first time you read it?
Percy Jackson.
Percy Jackson, is that the Lord of the Rings dude?
No, it's Rick Riordan. He wrote about these like Poseidon and Zeus. It's Greek mythology.
Oh, okay, got it. All right. Entrepreneurship can be a tough road. In difficult moments, how do you stay focused on moving forward and making progress?
We are just very obsessed with one North Star, which is incremental revenue we bring customers. And it's always just a game of how can we help dental practices grow, produce more from our tool. And having that as a North Star makes it much easier to stay motivated. If you're just focused on closing more sales and more sales, it's very easy to get discouraged. But it's very much in your hands how well your product works and how much incremental revenue practices are getting. So shifting focus on that helps a lot.
Okay. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
I honestly don't know.
You don't know who your greatest inspiration's been? Okay. What have you learned from the most successful person you know?
One of our mentors is Michael Seibel. He founded Twitch. And he's the reason we're called 10x Dental. He said, if you can build a product that makes a 10x difference in these dental practices, it'll be a big business. And if it's not making a big 10x difference, you're going to have a very sales-led motion. You're hiring more and more and more salespeople to propel your product and force it into practices.
Okay. What distracts you the most every day?
Scrolling Instagram and TikTok and stuff.
Not good for business then.
No, it's not good for business.
How do you capture and keep track of ideas? Do you keep a notebook or do you do voice memos?
I keep a notebook.
All right. Let's see. Who is someone that you would love to collaborate with in the dental industry, and what would you love to collaborate on?
I'd like to collaborate with PMS companies because they do a very good job running the day-to-day operations in dental practices. I'd like to help them spruce up their patient engagement layers, especially the newer ones like Curve, Denticon. The other person who'd be really good for us to collaborate with is John Christensen. He runs ChrisAd, and he has an incredible base of practices that are always adding more and more hygiene volume, and they're super recall focused. Also the DEO, they've been very, very good practices. And of course, your group is amazing.
I appreciate that. What has been, in the short time you've been in business, what has been the most satisfying moment in business for you?
The first time our AI made a phone call and scheduled a patient. Like, our whole team was wondering whether AI can actually schedule people or not. And that first booking on the phone, it was an old guy. When he scheduled, it was a very, very good moment. And when he showed up, that was also a very important moment for us.
Okay. Has anybody in the dental network been important to your journey so far?
Dan Hall from CareStack and Abhi from CareStack. Both of them have given us a lot of advice that's helped us reach the slightly more advanced stage we are now.
Okay, well, that's great. We got 2 questions left. How have you developed key partnerships in a short period of time?
We spend a lot of time at conferences talking to other companies who may be a good fit for us and working out arrangements where we can share business.
All right, last question, and it's either a business or personal. It doesn't have to be business. What is one subscription, which is something you pay for monthly or annually, what is one subscription that you cannot live without?
ChatGPT.
There you go. No doubt. I figured it was something AI driven. So, all right, Aman, this was great. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our audience. What is the best way for them to reach out to learn more about what 10x Dental can do for them?
My phone number is great. Should I say it on this?
Sure.
Sure. 415-319-3623.
And they can go to 10xdental.com as well. And they should mention the Raving Patients Podcast or myself, and they'll get the $200 for the first 30 days to earn further business, basically. So
Yes.
for you to prove the model to them. Great. Guys, if you liked what Aman has to say and you're interested in taking your recare to the next level, please reach out to Aman. He gave his contact information. You go to his website. Just make sure you mention you heard about him through me. You'll get the pilot for $200 for the first month. If you think a colleague could benefit, please share the podcast. Please like us. Please recommend us. I highly recommend it. I think what Aman's doing is great for the industry. Don't forget about my sponsors, Dental Intelligence, CallRail, and Net32, nor my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice. Aman will be there, and you can meet him in person. You can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and use the code RAVING to save $100 on your registration. And as I end every single one of my episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next one, Aman, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you, Len. Thank you for having me.